It's better now. Ambassador Veena ma'am, you can kindly take on, please.
Okay. Well, thank you. As I said, it's a very telling point, a very appropriately timed discussion, because we are now seeing, of course, the source of the whole problem is what happened in Bangladesh, as you highlighted in August 2024. We are just observing the barely first anniversary of what happened in August 2024. But clearly, what happened in Dhaka in August 2024 not only was non-indigenous, it was not something which happened from within Bangladesh. It was an externally supported event, externally supported with Pakistan as the main player, working through the Jamaat-e-Islami and certain sections of the Bangladesh army, but supported by external powers, definitely USA and China also very much in the know. Now, why I'm highlighting this at the beginning, because the repercussions of what has happened in Bangladesh a year ago and the effect now a year later highlight very strongly the external connections of what has happened. We are seeing more and more the importance of these external connections, and we are seeing that within Bangladesh, whatever has happened in the last 1 year has a totally different aspect. Looking at it from the external connection point of view, you are seeing as though what is happening in Bangladesh is a great success. Your Major General Sudhakar ji spoke about the meeting in with China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, and highlighting this new aspect, this new attempt to have. But we also have the question of General Asim Munir's infamous lunch with President Trump in Washington, D.C. Now, I think let me begin with that aspect, because I think that tells us a lot about what is happening within and outside Bangladesh. Bangladeshi scholars have written about it. There have been Bangladeshi articles in Bangladesh written about the fact that Asim Munir, during the lunch with President Trump, asked for the Pakistan being given control over Bangladesh in the present circumstances, that they should be allowed to direct the course of events in Bangladesh, and they should determine the future of what is going to happen in Bangladesh. And in this, he highlighted the importance of a second regime change that is underway now, and that is the regime to change the Chief of Army Staff of Bangladesh, General Waqar. Because really speaking, if we understand the situation within Bangladesh, the army is the one source of stability and a key source of authority within Bangladesh. And it has been so right from 1971, because even all the people who were the liberation fighters, they joined the Bangladesh army and have formed the backbone of the Bangladesh army. There's always been a dissident stream within the Bangladesh army, which is the officers who returned from Pakistan, who were actually interned in Pakistan during the entire 9-10 months between March and December 1971, because they were serving with the Pakistan army in Pakistan, posted there, and then they came back. These were the returnee officers, and there's always been a clash between the freedom fighters who joined the Bangladesh army and the returnees, the army officer returnees. You're seeing that clash existing till today. And even today, it is this clash that is working itself out in the Bangladesh army, that we are seeing this demand being made to change the army chief in Bangladesh. And Asim Munir would certainly have expected that it would have happened immediately after the lunch. But it is it's a signal indication of Bangladesh's resilience that this change has not yet happened, and the events in Bangladesh continue to unfold in a certain way. Now, let us see these two parallel aspects, what is happening outside Bangladesh and what is happening inside Bangladesh. I want to take you back, actually, to 1971. And I want to tell you that in 1971, or rather even in 1970, because 1971 March, Sheikh Mujib was arrested and sent back to Pakistan. He was not there for the entire year of the liberation, 9 months of the liberation war. But in 1970, when he was struggling and when he was establishing himself, establishing the Awami League, talking to Pakistan, getting ready for the elections, which he won with a huge majority, at that time, he was talking to many leaders. He was talking to India, he was talking to USA and other people in Bangladesh, the Consul General, the Deputy High Commissioner in the case of India, and so on. And he conveyed to some of our people that when he spoke to the Americans, one suggestion he got, and this fact has recently been published in a book published very recently by Avtar Singh Bhasin, when he talked about negotiating the Shimla Agreement. And Sheikh Mujib said that when he was talking to the Americans, they told him, you give us Martin Island, St. Martin's Island, and a few other islands, and everything will be all right for you. So right in 1970, the demand for St. Martin's Island, the demand for control over the Bay of Bengal, was one of the key issues that the Americans wanted in this area. And if we come to 50 years later, just before Sheikh Hasina faced the regime change operation in August last year, she publicly stated that she had faced the same demand. Certain people went to meet her, and she faced the same demand to hand over St. Martin's Island. Well, I can tell you that as of today, the talk in Bangladesh, nobody seems to know because nobody's allowed to go there, is that St. Martin's Island is now with the Americans, and it is no longer in the control of the Bangladesh or the Bangladesh army. So this indicates a very key aspect of the geopolitical situation surrounding what has happened in Bangladesh. And not only do we see that Pakistan was working through the Jamaat-e-Islami, but it is the Jamaat-e-Islami which is the main power behind the throne of Muhammad Yunus in Bangladesh. Muhammad Yunus is only doing what the Jamaat-e-Islami tells him to do, and that in turn, of course, is being told to him from Pakistan. So Muhammad Yunus is not his own person at all, and he is just doing this. But the Jamaat-e-Islami is keen to push for a complete change in the constitutional structure of Bangladesh, a complete move back to the pre-1971 levels. So the write-ups in the Pakistan media, the write-ups in some aspects of the Bangladesh media, the write-ups, of this, as I told you, was this article about the demands made by Field Marshal Asim Munir in his lunch with President Trump. All this is to reverse back to the pre-1971 situation, where it was Pakistan in control in the then East Pakistan, and then deciding what was going to happen. Now, this has also been reflected that in the last 1 year, we've had a great upsurge, a complete reversal of the previous relationship between Pakistan and Bangladesh that existed ever since 1971. But in the last 1 year, this has been completely reversed, and it was, I would say, solidified last week with the visit to Bangladesh by the Deputy Prime Minister of Pakistan, Ishaq Dar, and the agreement signed, the decisions made, and simultaneously, almost simultaneously, while Ishaq Dar was in Bangladesh, you had the visit to Pakistan by the Quartermaster General of the Bangladesh Army, General Fazlur Rahman. And he had his a series of meetings. He was there for 1 week almost, and had a series of discussions at the highest level in Pakistan. And General Fazlur Rahman, the Quartermaster General, is the person who is talked about or commonly referred to as the next army chief. And he is the one who is favored by Pakistan to replace General Waqar-uz-Zaman, who is the current army chief. I would say that General Waqar-uz-Zaman has been maintaining the peace very strongly, and he has, in fact, very clearly laid down. He's had discussions with his own army officers, what they call the Darbar, and come out with specific points publicly stated on what he sees for Bangladesh. And for example, even at that time when there was talk of this humanitarian corridor. Now, this brings me to the other geopolitical input into the situation, which is what is happening in Myanmar. And that geopolitical input was highlighted first when the UN Secretary General was in Bangladesh a few months ago, and he said that he would like to have a humanitarian corridor going into the Arakan region of Myanmar through Bangladesh, and for giving humanitarian relief. But this was being talked about openly as a perhaps even an arms corridor through which arms would be supplied to the Arakan army, which, as you know, has had great victories against the Myanmar junta, and now controls entirely controls the border between Myanmar and Bangladesh, and this is why it was. But the Bangladesh army opposed it and said we are opposed to the humanitarian corridor, but because we feel it'll impinge on the sovereignty of Bangladesh. Now, this was almost the first, I would say, indication of some kind of resistance, a different view within Bangladesh that is there. And certainly within a strong section of the Bangladesh army, although as I clearly pointed out, there are other sections that are much more pro-Pakistan. And at that time, the entire burgeoning facilities for this humanitarian corridor, which was happening because Mohammed Yunus was working directly with the regional commander, the GOC at Ramu in Cox's Bazar region. So that stopped, but all that has now been revived. So I think if we look at two aspects of what has happened at Bangladesh, the internal aspect seems to be a little different from the external pressures which are there, which are led by Pakistan to completely change the situation and complete the regime change operation in Bangladesh. Within Bangladesh, there has been a lot of writing, even there have been polls, there have been surveys, and the polls and the surveys show that the people of Bangladesh do not want very much of what Mohammed Yunus, at the behest of the Jamaat-e-Islami, is trying to bring into Bangladesh. They do not want the constitutional changes that are being talked about. There was talk about having a July proclamation, about having a second republic. But by the time the anniversary came on 5th of August this year, there was a July declaration read out by Mohammed Yunus, which was a very much watered down version of what the new political party, the NCP, National Citizens Party, said to be a students' party, but not really a students' party at all. And they had wanted a much stronger one, but now we have a much more watered down. There have been poll surveys that saying who is it that now enjoys political support in Bangladesh. And I don't think it's any surprise that there is no support for the Jamaat-e-Islami. The Jamaat-e-Islami remains at the same level of 10 to 12%, maybe it's gone up to 15% now, of support of the people. And the NCP, the newly created party, has hardly any political support at all. So really, it's the two major political parties that have always been there since, Awami League since 1971, and BNP since the time when Zia-ur-Rahman was the president of Bangladesh, and they continue to enjoy the bulk of the popular support. So within Bangladesh, we saw even in August 71 or thereabouts, a new platform has been created called Monch 1971, a platform. It's a civic platform. It's really a group of people led by a professor from university, a Supreme Court lawyer, who want to protect the values of the 1971 Liberation War, and they're determined to go to all ends to do it, depending on how the situation emerges. So clearly, the so-called spontaneous students' uprising declared in August 2024 was neither spontaneous nor was it a students-led uprising. It was really a takeover by the Jamaat-e-Islami, and Mohammed Yunus himself stated so, because he said so in New York in September 2024, saying that he introduced his own private secretary, who is now an advisor in the government, saying, here is the mastermind. It was not spontaneous. He meticulously designed it. So based on that, and based on the external situation, which is really different from what it is within Bangladesh, what is it that India should be looking at? India has shown a great deal of patience, a great deal of strategic restraint in its dealings with Bangladesh. We have right from the very beginning said that we are happy to continue the excellent relations that we've had with Bangladesh under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and all the agreements and the various forces set into position, set into motion, the connectivity, all the cooperatives, the power, the energy, electricity, you name it. We had this excellent cooperation with Bangladesh. Trade, of course, mutually beneficial in all its aspects. And the students who came to India, the people to people, all that, we wanted to keep that in place. But that was not what the regime led by Mohammed Yunus, backed by the Jamaat-e-Islami, had in mind. And they, right from the very beginning, gave a totally different picture of what they wanted to do with India. And there has been a bilateral meeting in April 2025 between Prime Minister Modi and Mohammed Yunus on the sidelines of the BIMSTEC summit in Bangkok. But there too, of course, our Prime Minister explained very clearly and emphatically that India's support is there for a democratic, stable, peaceful, progressive, and inclusive Bangladesh. And he reiterated our support for a relationship which is people-to-people centric on the people-to-people relationship, because that's how we've always seen our links with Bangladesh. Now, the only way to achieve what Prime Minister Modi described during his meeting with Bangladesh, even after that, there's been no change. We've been rebuffed at every turn, and every effort has been made to change, to reduce the trade relationship, to stopping the exports and so on. Turkey has promised to come in and replace whatever they import, whatever Bangladesh had been importing from India, but it hasn't worked out like that, because if you want to get something from Turkey, it's going to take you weeks, whereas from India, in 3-4 days, you could get your cotton yarn, your madman yarn, your textile machinery, whatever you wanted would come in short time, would be the inputs into Bangladesh's own exports and contribute to the prosperity of Bangladesh, which was 6% plus rate of growth for 15 years, leading them even to graduate from the least developed country status. But instead of that, because the trade avenues are increasingly being cut off, many factories in Bangladesh have closed, their growth rate has halved, people are unemployed. Even the Bangladesh Bank in July of this year, 2025, spoke about a very difficult macroeconomic outlook because of the uncertainty of the elections, about the, no private investment at all, hyperinflation, lack of jobs, and so on. So the dismal situation is such that everybody in Bangladesh is now welcoming what was the previous situation. How do we reconcile the external planning for Bangladesh, the Devil's Triangle that General Sudhakar ji has written about, the plans for St. Martin's Island, which are already in position, the plans for Myanmar. This was part of what Asim Munir spoke to President Trump about, that he would be able to lead it. He talked about the 4-party alliance, the 4 groups of the Rohingyas, which are really the highly radicalized groups led by the ARSA, all supported by the ISI, led by the RSO. There's 4 groups coming together, and that Pakistan would support them and lead the fight into Myanmar against the junta. But this is a very dangerous situation, because we're seeing 2 conflicting aspects here. If you talk about the ISI telling America to lead into Myanmar, then you're putting them in a direct clash with China, because China supports the junta. You're talking of a direct military clash, even possibility. China supports the junta, have been giving them weaponry and aircraft, even after the drubbing that the Myanmar junta received in Arakan, in the Rakhine state, at the hands of the Arakan army. Even after that, China has given more aircraft to Myanmar and so on. How do you reconcile this with China's own description of Pakistan as a great friend, higher than the mountains, deeper than the seas, and of China's own overwhelming relationship with Bangladesh, dependent on trade, dependent on supply of 80% of its military equipment? So it's a very difficult situation to reconcile what these 2 aspects, the external dimension and the internal dimension. Pakistan is trying to reconcile this by bringing in more and more weaponry from Pakistan into Bangladesh, by positioning its brigadiers and senior officers in every division of the Bangladesh army in all sensitive places, near the border with India. We've all heard about the plans for Lal Munir Hat, which is to revive that Second World War British Air Force base, to modernize it, to make it 700 acres of land apparently have been allotted for this purpose, and you can station 70 aircraft there. So this is what are the plans, and in fact work on that has already started. But within Bangladesh, the situation of the people is different. In my view, to reconcile all of this, the most important factor now is to push ahead for free, fair, and inclusive elections, because the regime in Bangladesh has banned the activities of the Awami League. They have also banned any mention of the Awami League in the media of Bangladesh. So they have, as you know, one of the things they have done is complete control of the media. They don't allow anything. They've taken over boardrooms of the media houses. Journalists have lost their jobs. Journalists are in jail on murder charges. So the media is completely, so the external world gets a picture completely different from what is the reality of the situation in Bangladesh. Completely different. The external world does not even or pretends not to know what is happening in Bangladesh. Even the atrocities on the minorities, the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, the atrocities on the Muslim minorities, the Sufiyas and the Ahmadiyas, the extreme atrocities on the Awami Leaguers, killings, everything. Even in Gopalganj recently, even the army had to shot innocent civilians who rose against the NCP because they wanted to desecrate the mausoleum of Sheikh Mujib in Tungipara. So I think we have to be aware of this, but we have to push very hard, because the Pakistan narrative, they're trying to take over the narrative also and control the narrative globally on Bangladesh, and they want to engineer a rigged election. They have been talking to Tariq Rahman in London. There's a lineup already in place that Mohammad Yunus will be the president, and
Ma'am,
Tariq
request
Rahman
you to kindly conclude.
2 minutes, yeah. Mohammad Yunus will be the president, Tariq Rahman will be the prime minister, and the deputy prime minister will be the chief of the of the Jamaat-e-Islami, the Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami. So as against this, what we have to try and do is to ensure that the elections are free, fair, and inclusive. Awami League must be allowed to participate. This is exactly what they are accusing Awami League of doing earlier. They're doing the same thing themselves, that Awami League will not be allowed. And we have to have the elections taking place under a new caretaker chief, because Mohammad Yunus can no longer be the caretaker chief, since he has not been able to arrange elections in the last 12 months and more, and he does not fulfill the criteria for a caretaker chief. He's got political party representatives in his advisors group, which is against the mandate of a caretaker government, and he has completely violated every norm. So if we push for this is the narrative that we have to work on very hard. No doubt we are keeping a very close view on what is happening in Bangladesh, but this narrative is very, very important now. Otherwise, democracy will have disappeared, and we will have a very difficult situation, because the eastern borders, our 4,000-kilometer border with Bangladesh, is very porous. Even though it is fenced in large quantities, very porous. It is the input for illegal immigrants from Bangladesh, and it affects the security of our northeastern states. And you know that Yunus went to China and told Chinese businessmen, come to Bangladesh, I control access to the northeast. So he is, offering the northeast of India on a platter to Chinese businessmen and others. We know about your inner devil's triangle, where, they are trying to ingratiate themselves in So I think these are all the issues. We work for free, fair elections with a new government. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Ambassador Veena, ma'am, thank you so much. It couldn't have been better. You have highlighted many issues, but the important highlights are external connections and the internal dimensions. External connections are actually playing the roost, whatever is happening today. And one important thing that you brought up is about the Field Marshal Muniz lunch, that his proposal to the president of USA to allow Pakistan to take control of Bangladesh is a very important input, which is actually going to answer a lot of questions. Also, you have highlighted one aspect, that the matter of St. Martin's Island is a 50-year-old story, way back much prior to 1970s, when Pakistan was in control of Bangladesh. That itself as already in occupation of USA. This is, I need to update my data and information. This is a very important turn of event. If it has happened, then it is going to answer further more queries and make things very I'll request all the subscribers kindly mute your audio and otherwise, to make it more meaningful and receptive. Pakistan's the deputy prime minister and the foreign minister, Ishaq Dar, when he came, he signed a couple of MOUs. One of the MOU is reinforcing what you have just shared, ma'am. There is actually, it is about the media of Bangladesh. In a way, it is being taken over gradually by ISPR of Pakistan, which is a very dangerous sign. India needs to be mindful of that. And the Quartermaster General having been tipped, Quartermaster General of Bangladesh Army, having been tipped to become the next chief of the army staff, is also, a stinking foul about the regime change in many aspects, and it may actually lead to manipulation of elections. We should be very, very aware of. And last but not the least, ma'am, that you have spoken indirectly is that on 14th of April, in the teacher and the students' interaction the Dhaka University, there was a flag which was displayed called as Greater Bangladesh. That flag essentially covered Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa from India's side, all the northeastern states of India, and the Rakhine province of Myanmar. And plus, you have also highlighted about the corridor to which Bangladesh has responded by conveying its aversion, and they don't like. It is not in the national interest of Bangladesh and such like issues. One last point, if I may add here, is that apart from free, fair, inclusive elections that India can actually focus on, is the issue regarding Turkey or Turkey and Qatar. Qatar is employing Bangladesh armed forces in Qatar itself to train the armed forces of Qatar. It is paying money to promote religious training in madrasas in Bangladesh. Plus, it is also providing a kind of a conduit to Turkey to pump in money into this place. Turkey's singular aim is to win the contestation between Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Turkey in actually achieving the Ummah, status of Ummah in the Islamic world. So therefore, it is spreading it win, be it Maldives or Bangladesh. So with this, I thank you once again, ma'am, for a beautiful presentation and bringing out such issues which perhaps will actually give a lot of weightage and gravitas to the today's panel discussion. Now I request Professor Sriparna Pathak, who's a professor from Jindal Global University, and she deserves to have the last say in matters related to China. She is an expert. She spent 26 years, and more than that, today in the evening, I learned something very interesting, that from today onwards, I take the liberty of addressing her. She is the Jhansi in this panel discussion. 19th of November is her birthday, which is supposed to be kept closely guarded by. Take the liberty. Wish you all the very best. You are a warrior, you are a fighter, and you are a role model and torch bearer of India in many aspects. Go full blast, cover us, give us those details which will make all of us empowered with, to comprehend the subject matter better. Is China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, given the fact that 81 to 82% of the military hardware of Pakistan and Bangladesh are being imported from China, what more is left? When you talk about an economic collaborative effort, I think this is just a facade. Military alliance is coming round the corner, and hence I have come to the conclusion that this is a devil's triangle which is going to create a lot of nefarious activities and trouble for India. Over to Professor Sriparna Pathak, please.
Thank you, sir. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be here. And thank you so much for your support. I had made two slides. Okay. There's a disablement of the share. Okay. I'm just going to then maybe read through what I had made. So this term Devil's Triangle was very smartly, very efficiently coined by Sir Major General Sudhakar ji. And this describes an emerging strategic alliance between China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, and that poses a multifaceted threat to India. What's interesting is that when we talk of this triangle, there's a parallel to the Bermuda Triangle, which is a region known for its mysterious dangers. So, the ways in which China is working with Pakistan and Bangladesh, while we know most of it, there's also a mysterious aspect to it. So, what is on the surface? There's much more beneath the surface. The triangle, of course, is a deliberate counter to India's regional dominance, particularly threatening the Siliguri corridor, which is also called the Chicken's Neck. How does the Devil's Triangle work against India post Operation Sindoor? Operation Sindoor, as we all know, it humiliated Pakistan through direct strikes on its soil and by exposing its weaknesses in defenses, mostly bolstered by Chinese technology. So that has now accelerated the consolidation of this triangle as a retaliatory and containment strategy against India. If we look at in which different ways this triangle is trying to work against India, I'll break it down into the realms of military, economic, diplomatic, and infrastructure. In terms of military and security cooperation, China has intensified infrastructure build-up in contested areas like Doklam and along the LAC as well, while Pakistan maintains the pressure on the LOC. Bangladesh's involvement adds an eastern flank, and there have been reports of increased Chinese military aid and potential basing rights in Bangladeshi ports. One of them, which comes up through a lot of chatter on Chinese social media, is Chattogram in Bangladesh. This triangle could enable coordinated actions to choke the Siliguri corridor, and one cannot forget that the northeast was definitely mentioned when the head of the so-called interim government uh, had actually gone to meet Xi Jinping. Generally, when heads of state meet, they try to not discuss how certain parts of other countries are close to them and so on. But that was discussed, and I think that gives a clear enough picture. Post Operation Sindoor, China provided diplomatic cover and replenished Pakistan's military losses after the operation, including upgrades to air defenses. This emboldens Pakistan to continue proxy terrorism. Bangladesh's shift now, which we now see, allows for potential smuggling routes or safe havens for anti-India militants. A lot of them who find safe havens, even in within Bangladesh. In terms of joint exercises and intelligence sharing, the trio has discussed trilateral military drills, focusing on counter-terrorism, ironically, given the role that Pakistan plays, and border security. So that's a veiled preparation against India. When we look at economic and infrastructural leverage, China has deepened economic ties with Pakistan via the CPEC. Now they're talking about the CPEC 2.0 and including Afghanistan in that. And with Bangladesh, there's the BRI, of course. Post Operation Sindoor, these investments have been accelerating, potentially creating dependencies that sideline Indian trade. In terms of challenging India's regional influence, this trio, this devil's triangle, aims to boost intra triangle trade, excluding India and reducing reliance on Indian markets. In terms of energy and resource plays, China and Pakistan are exploring joint ventures in Bangladesh's energy sector, potentially diverting resources like natural gas from India dependent resources. In terms of diplomatic as well as propaganda efforts, the trio have been countering India's narrative. Post Operation Sindoor, this triangle has amplified all sorts of anti India rhetoric in international forums. China and Pakistan have lobbied against India in the UN on Kashmir, while Bangladesh's so called interim government has raised issues like water sharing and so on to portray India as a regional bully. The timing is not to be missed out. And all of this is happening in coordination, which means that there is definitely some sort of talk which is going on between these three. Um, in terms of exploiting global tensions, given Trump's crazy rants and his tariffs, India-US relations are currently strained. This triangle is trying to position itself as an alternative axis and trying to attract support from other countries which are wary of India's rise. In terms of internal destabilization, there are also concerns about funding anti-India elements within India, such as separatist groups in the northeast, leveraging Bangladesh's proximity and so on. So that's a challenge. Now, if we take a deeper dive into understanding China's engagements with Pakistan since May 2025, what is seen is that China and Pakistan have deepened their all-weather strategic partnership through multiple high-level meetings. In fact, even after Wang Yi visited New Delhi, he went to Afghanistan and then to Pakistan, wherein he said, and I quote, "As has always been the case, China supports Pakistan's sovereignty and territorial claims." I think China couldn't be clearer than that. They've also done a lot of these economic pledges, security focused dialogues. In May 2025, there was the trilateral meeting with Afghanistan in Beijing, and Wang Yi had hosted Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar and Afghanistan's Acting Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi. The meeting resulted in 13 cooperative agreements, currency swaps, and trade deals. So that's one. In June, after the May meeting, China verbally agreed to extend the CPEC infrastructure to Kabul at Pakistan's request, and that was stated by Pakistani Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar. This is built on the bilateral engagements from April and May. In July, China's special envoy on Afghan affairs, Ye Xiaoyong, he visited Pakistan and Afghanistan to advance law enforcement cooperation and CPEC integration. On August 20th, there was, of course, the trilateral meeting with Afghanistan, hosted by the Taliban, and so on. On August 21st, Wang Yi and Ishak Dar agreed to launch new CPEC projects, as if CPEC 1.0 is already over. That's far from completion, but they decided on launching new CPEC projects. Pakistan's Prime Minister is also scheduled to visit China to formally launch the CPEC Phase 2. And I just hope that that doesn't actually coincide with the timing when our Prime Minister Modi, will be in Tianjin. But if it's done, it'll be a smart move from the side of Beijing. Now, in terms of China-Bangladesh engagements, again, these engagements, they focus on economic investments or defense ties and strategic partnerships. In May 2025, China's Commerce Minister Wang Wentao, he led a delegation of 250 investors, the largest ever, to Bangladesh to explore economic cooperation opportunities. In late June 2025, Bangladesh's Army Chief General Wakar Uz Zaman, he made his first official foreign visit to China, deepening defense ties. So these apparently build on earlier 2025 interactions when Yunus had visited Beijing and so on. Uh, a pivotal development has been the formalization of trilateral ties, seen as a counter to the regional framework like SARC. And in June this year, there was this inaugural meeting. It has already been mentioned by Veena ma'am and by Major General Sir. During what is called China's South Asia Expo, this trilateral inaugural ministerial meeting was hosted. It involved Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weitong, Bangladeshi Acting Foreign Secretary Rahul Alam Siddiqui, Pakistan's Additional Foreign Secretary Imran Ahmed Siddiqui, and Foreign Secretary Amna Baloch via video. So they agreed to advance cooperation, industry, trade, maritime affairs, water resources, and so on. So these engagements actually reflect China's proactive diplomacy within South Asia and trying to leverage certain lacuna. Pakistan, the lesser said, the better. But given that there is a certain momentum in Bangladesh right now and it's getting increasingly anti-India, China is playing on the rhetoric and trying to encircle India in myriad forms of way. And that's why there's this devil's triangle. That's something India has been watching very closely. There are planning. There's a lot of planning which is going on within India also, how to counter that. But I'm just going to stop here. And thank you so much for your patience, and thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you, Sriparna. Couldn't have been better. You have covered very important aspect with regard to the China's dominance in the entire game plan of this Devil's Triangle. Apart from covering Siliguri corridor, you have highlighted the Operation Sindoor, which has been not taken. Actually, it's a big humiliation to Pakistan. Pakistan may resort to any kind of information warfare to deflect the issue, but it is actually a humiliation to Pakistan. They will take anything up to 1 year or more than 1 year to take stock and come to a realization as to where has hit them. If I am privy to many things, and a number of aircrafts lost and all. Unfortunately, our own countrymen, they demand evidence, and also therefore one is forbidden to open the mouth. Second thing you have highlighted is there is the retaliatory or the containment strategy of Pakistan against India. This is a fantastic thing that you have actually covered. You have not only touched upon Doklam, which is essentially we stopped them in 2017, but they have done a very smart move. 9 kilometers east of Doklam, there is a village called a Pagda. They have constructed a road which is going close to the same place which otherwise they would have gone to. That is called a Jhamferi. Jhamferi Ridge, actually giving them a predominance of observation by fire and observation. These are the two things that we talk about in military science. The distance is around 17 kilometers. What it means is that any artillery gun which is deployed, they have the OP's observation post in high vantage points. They are able to see the movement of our resources through the corridor, and they can bring down or choke or cut off this particular corridor at ease. And next point you have highlighted is about the trilateral meeting. Apart from the economic paradigm, you have also highlighted the military drills. This is a very important thing. The deepening of the economic ties with Pakistan and Bangladesh, BRI, as on today, many of us may not know $38 billion of Chinese money, BRI money, has been committed for Bangladesh, out of which 3 or 4 years back was 13.5. My latest research indicates that around 20 billion have been committed, whether it is the bridge across the Padma or the railway line or the pipeline. And most important thing, maybe as a value addition, if I can add, 60 trillion cubic feet of gas, liquid natural gas. It's a huge reservoir between Bangladesh and Tripura. China is trying to access this particular thing right up to its pipeline, which has been laid along the western flank of Rakhine province, going up to Shan and up to the Sichuan province. Energy sector that you have spoken is very, very important. Also, you have said about the global tension. Now, the global tension, to me, my analysis suggests that there is a very tacit shift in the policy of USA. When I say shift in policy of USA, to justify my statement, I would say there is a gradual legitimization of non-state actors into the rules-based international order. When I make this particular statement, what I mean is, talk about Afghanistan, the Taliban is gradually being allowed to come into the mainstream. Talk about Syria, the same ISIS leader on whose head was a bounty which has been allocated. He's been made as one of the smartest men and the best leader in the world. Talk about Pakistan. Asim Munir has been called onto the lap of USA and invited for lunch and second invitation. Now you see what is happening in Bangladesh. There is a gradual shift, because I personally feel, having traveled the length and breadth of USA, I feel that the intelligence department may not be coming out in open, but there is a realization that they have to remain on the side of these non-state actors, otherwise they may face another 9/11. This is a stark reality which may be contested, but this is my conviction. Next point you have brought out is about the Pakistan PM scheduled visit to China. This is important. This is going to be a masterstroke. This may be termed as a deceit if China allows it to happen during this impending visit. I hope it doesn't. If it happens, then the tentacles of India must go up. We should be extra careful. And last but not the least, you have brought out one issue regarding the cooperation, economic, maritime, the leverage that China has on many issues, particularly the critical mineral. You talk about the lithium and other issues, which is actually holding a lot of economies at tenterhooks. We are unable to go across. Maritime, when you talk about the maritime, Bay of Bengal used to be an area of dominance as far as Indian Navy is concerned. With China coming in such a big way, America, that St. Martin's Island having gone to America, apart from the strategic rivalry, I fear that there is going to be a turbulence in the Bay of Bengal, which used to be a kind of a backyard for us. But now India has to factor in this new calculus, security calculus, and come out with something innovative and creative, how best we can prevent ourselves from any mishap. With that, I'll thank you once again and request Ambassador Satish Mehta to kindly take his part, and thereafter we'll leave it open for the forum to come out with questions, please.
Thank you very much, General Sudhakar ji, for your wonderful summing up of what the earlier two very erudite and very knowledgeable speakers had mentioned. And it only proves the kind of knowledge and understanding that Ambassador Veena Sikri has of Bangladesh. She writes regularly, and I'm sure some of your audience will be following what she writes. I, of course, do. And always very, very illuminating. And of course, she's the expert on China. So, and a good thing of speaking last is that they already covered not just Bangladesh and China, but also Pakistan and what's happening between Bangladesh and Pakistan, and what's happening between China and Bangladesh, as also between the three of them. So, and I think we have taken enough time, so maybe I'll be very quick, and I'll just actually start with two things. One is when you're talking of devil's triangle, which you had coined, at times these things tend to become self-fulfilling prophecies. I think we need to be a little careful about it. China-Pakistan coordination and cooperation has been there for almost as far back as we can remember. Bangladesh was a different case, definitely. But China-Pakistan has been there. So I don't think it should come as a surprise to us or it should come as a concern to us in that sense. There is something new, it's not something new. We have always known it, I guess we prepared for it. Our journalists have been speaking about two-front war, now it's become third also. And since it's post-Operation Sindoor, let me actually start with posing some questions. So that we clarify our minds. Are we talking in terms of a military conflict with the three on one side and India? Is that so? If you look back at China's attitude and approach, China has evolved. China of 62 or China of 65 or 71 is not the China of today. For sure, absolutely. But China is not, even during Kargil war, China kept out. China has been very careful in getting into other people's wars so far. In the last war, they fought was in 79. Since then, they've been fighting wars for other means, and I think they follow their own Sun Tzu, that, you just basically play mind sport and mind games on your opponents, where they actually concede defeat even before fighting the war. So I do not think this to be an immediate likelihood. How would it happen? Either China attacks us, other two join, or other two start, and then China joins. I don't think other two have the capacity to start a war even together on India. And Bangladesh knows BSF is actually bigger than the Bangladeshi armed forces. And CRPF is about 25% higher than, or one-third higher than the size. Just the size of CRPF is bigger than that, bigger than Bangladesh army. For us, so now the question, let me actually kickstart the debate here. Siliguri corridor and defense of Siliguri corridor. I've been GS North also, so I'm quite familiar with that, both the terrain and the issues involved. And as actually Assam Chief Minister said recently at the Planning Commission meeting, that the Siliguri corridor is about 24 kilometers wide. We can cut Rangpur completely, which is about 60 kilometers. And you solve the problem forever, about Siliguri corridor. And I'm sure we can do it much faster than whatever Bangladesh can do. Similarly, and very interestingly, and he's a serious politician. And he is a very serious politician. He is an important politician. And he also said, and this came immediately after Bangladeshi Yunus mentioned about being guardians of sea, etc. And he said, look, from Tripura, the southernmost tip of Tripura to Chittagong port is 28 kilometers. He said Bangladesh also has chicken smacks. And I guess our capabilities are far, far greater than Bangladesh to chop them before they can do any damage to us. I'm sure Bangladesh will understand that. So so I do not, maybe General Sudhakar, you can check it. But I do not foresee a war, a kinetic war. That's one point. Second point is, as Ambassador Sikri mentioned, about this is a game between, right now what you're seeing is the game between the three principal players are India, US, and China in Bangladesh, not Pakistan. Pakistan is, in that sense, a side player. I mean, it will perhaps assist US or China. And here's the dilemma for Pakistan, as you rightly pointed out. Whom do you support? Whose side do you weigh? Because the side the US is supporting is very different from the side that Chinese are supporting. So I do not think there is, it will be very easy for Pakistan to make a choice. Maybe Ambassador Sikri can throw some light on this. Because Pakistan can't play both sides forever, and certainly not on Bangladesh. So that's a larger question. So this three triangular war, to me, looks we should be prepared for it, absolutely. And I'm sure we would have made preparations, because our army people are also talking about opening. So that we are concerned, and I'm sure when you're concerned, you actually also address those concerns. That's one part. The second is, of course, economic and rest of it. Look at the size and scale. Bangladesh's army defense budget is about $3.5 billion. Ours is $75 billion. Pakistan is about $9 billion. So there's a huge scale difference just between Bangladesh and Pakistan, between India and Pakistan, India and Bangladesh. Just to rattle some figures. Pakistan's foreign exchange, foreign currency borrowings are $92 billion. Ours is $317 billion, covered by the foreign exchange reserve of almost touching $700 billion. And it's almost touching $700 billion. It varies every week by $2-3 billion. And there's no comparison, whether in terms of GDP, whether in terms of PPP, whichever way you define it, defense forces, etc. And Bangladesh, of course, really was. They have 40 aircrafts, 45 aircrafts. What does it count? I mean, I don't want to be provocative, but perhaps Sudhakar, you can mention. I think it will take our Air Force just basically 1 or 2 days to knock out the entire Air Force, and thereafter perhaps hand it over to border security force to deal with the rest. If you look at the numbers of Bangladeshi defense forces, I mean, the BSF is bigger than that. So a kinetic war, 3 sides coming together, and I'm talking about the next 5-7 years. I don't think this will happen. And Bangladesh will not remain what it is, perhaps after next elections. If the Awami League is kept out of the elections, it won't be easy because they have a large following, regardless of the current difficulties. And as you rightly pointed out, Jamaat Islam doesn't carry much weight in people. I mean, they have captured power through backdoor. It can't continue for long. They'll have to accommodate one of them, either BNP, and then if BNP comes in again, they'll push Jamaat because that is the opponent if Awami League is kept out. So we'll see what happens in the next 6 months when they go for elections, if they do so. But the second, of course, is economic and other aspects, where you see this cooperation between China and Pakistan have been going on. China and these are not something which happened after Operation Sindoor. The cooperation between ISI and Bangladesh started earlier. So while we have to be very careful about it, I don't think we have to be alarmist about it. Because and this is important to have this this understanding and this clarity, because your decisions depend upon the percentage play. What kind of numbers you put on the percentage of things happening. If the three come together, then and fight a war in India, the calculation is very, very different. And you act accordingly. But if you know the likelihood is not in the foreseeable future, 5-10 years, then you play the game differently. Then you play a little longer game and then see how you can change things. And I'm sure we have enough. Perhaps Ambassador Sikri has been very discreet about it, but I'm sure we have enough things going on in Bangladesh. This is not something that we're just sitting on the sides and watching. Maybe, ma'am, if you can open up on this, it will be more interesting on this aspect. Now about Pakistan and how it's fully understandable. Pakistan playing the China card. Pakistan now has a little American card. Though I'll be very careful for Pakistan to play the American card because given the nature of Trump, he may flip tomorrow morning and simply say, "Well, who's this general? I don't like generals," because it's just more. Look at the consistent US policy in the last 25 years. It has been to put pressure on China and work with India. That imperative is not gone. I don't think America has given up on its desire to remain number one. That's pretty clear. And if you see today's Economic Times and a couple of other newspapers and magazines, and very credible ones, not sources from India, and they said India will surpass US by 30 years, just 15 years, 13 years from today, in per capita in terms of purchasing power parity. That's something very important. So my sense is what's happening with, and if you also go back to what Trump said when Prime Minister met him in February 13 or February 17, what was the date? When he said, oh, Bangladesh, I leave it to Prime Minister Modi, he knows that better. Am I right, ma'am? He said something to that effect. Something to this effect. I leave it to Prime Minister Modi, he knows it better. He'll handle it. So, all this change in US, my sense, and again, I'm correct me on this, because Bangladesh seems to be the right in the eye of the storm for us right now. Because Pakistan, we know the nature of the beast. China, we understand. Perhaps, this is what I live in Jaipur, so I don't sit in Delhi, and so things get very filtered when they reach Jaipur, if at all they reach Jaipur. The sense is that I don't think American take on Hasina was a little different, that she was not as popular. That was their take. And they realized soon later she'll lose the elections, and they thought better get their people and get St. Martin's airport, maybe at some stage for use against India, but it was used against China. And look at the larger picture, how they want to control things. I mean, you need to see the larger picture as Americans, what they're doing. They've taken over Panama Canal. So there's one choke point on China. Once you take over Panama Canal, which they have literally taken it over, not physically. Malacca Strait can be choked. They have major choke points. So the only access to which China has been working is through Myanmar. Pipelines, roads. So for that eventuality, Malacca Strait is choked. Bangladesh is Gaur port is one, but that's just too far to take trucks from Gaur port up to mainland China or the eastern parts of China. So they're working on Myanmar and this access. That's where perhaps America want this airfield. Maybe at some stage for use against India, that we become number one or we become their competitor. Not immediately. So I think it's more against China than us. And maybe they realize that we were backing perhaps the horse which will not win next election. Or was not playing ball. So this is my take on Bangladesh as somebody sitting very away from Delhi and never served in Bangladesh. As for Pakistan, as you Sudhakar ji rightly mentioned, it will take a lot of time to recover from what they've been dealt with. Browder is okay. I mean, the easiest way, and their contradictions come out. On one hand, they say we won the war. On second hand, you say we will seek revenge. Look, if you won the war, what revenge are you seeking? I mean, normally, a loser seeks a revenge or a revenge match, not a winner. So, one hand, they've been petting themselves, promoting themselves, self-promotion, self-regulation of having won the war. And then you say we'll seek revenge. And next time it will be worse for India. Obviously, what you're saying is this is a pretty bad licking that we got. So, yes, we have to be careful and cautious. With Pakistan, we know the nature of the enemy, so I don't think we have to worry about it because we know it. With China, we know it. With Bangladesh, I don't know if all is lost today. We'll see what happens when elections happen, or what happens when actually Americans pull out knives. And then Pakistan will have to take a call which side it wants to be. Helping China or helping Americans in Bangladesh. It can't help both at the same time. And right now it can continue. So that's my short take on this triangularity. Economy-wise, I think we can handle Bangladesh. It's not a major problem for us. Right now, we should start doing it tomorrow itself. Last year we imported about 6,000 crore worth of garments from Bangladesh. Now that American market is drying up, stop getting anything from Bangladesh. The manufacturers immediately get about 5,000, 6,000 crore worth of production which they can sell elsewhere, or including domestically. But that's what we are doing. Go to Marks and Spencer, and half the garments there are made in Bangladesh. Go to H&M, and half the garments there are made in Bangladesh. We just have to do these things for ourselves to put more pressure on Bangladesh. And I'm sure they see reason for that. Rest is the other thing we can do. I mean, I don't have to go into that. This is not a forum, but there are enough things that perhaps we can do a big deal. So I think that's where I'll stop. And now we can open for question answers. Some of which I've already actually being a thrown at other panelists and you. But I think that will enrich the debate.
Yeah.
Because Pakistan, we know the beast, no point of my narrating it, and I can give you all the thanks, but it's pretty much known. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you so much for covering almost everything which is playing in the minds of every subscriber and citizen of our country, India, as also those who are across and overseas. You have touched upon the fronts. This is the most important thing that when you talk about a front, being a military man, I personally feel what is actually three front or 2.5 or two front to us, it is gradually turning into a single front as far as China is concerned because of the space or the satellite assets and the platforms it enjoys. How it happens, actually, if time permits, I'll explain in one of the question answers. But as far as India is concerned, it is unlikely in the historical perspective, if you analyze any of the warfare which has taken place in the subcontinent, not more than one front has become active. One. Secondly, it is the military strategy. The strategists, they have to come into play. Along with the diplomats, we have to put our best foot forward to make sure that there is a strategic reset in keeping more than one front quiet. Only one front can be tackled efficiently and effectively. That has to be ensured by somebody in country. I'm sure people in the higher up. I have been inspired by Ambassador Veena ma'am to talk to some people today, and I have been assured that country is looking into all the aspects in a very comprehensive manner, and we are taking very, very tough measures that nothing is likely to surprise India as far as this particular devil's triangle.
Let me look, you are a better diplomat than I am because you have dodged the question. Let me put it very straight to you. It's important for audience to understand. You won't speak for Indian Army as much as I don't speak for Foreign Ministry now. If the three-front war began, for example, which I posed to you, would it take us more than 48 hours to take the entire Bangladesh Air Force out and leave it to BSF to extend the Siliguri corridor, which means basically take a cut Rangpur, the northernmost division of Bangladesh, which is 60 kilometers or 80 kilometers wide, and to move from Tripura to Chittagong port, which is about 26 kilometers. How long will it take? 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? Will it take more than that?
3 days.
3 days. Okay. So of the three fronts, one will work only for 3 days.
I think Ambassador Veena ma'am wants to say something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I wanted a very clear answer from you because this was my take on this. I've spoken to a couple of serious Bangladesh experts,
very eminent and distinguished speakers are there. So my only submission is that issue related to military dynamics be not discussed in the open forum. This is the advice I have been given by higher ups. And be assured that the QPQ or the quid pro quo, they have been identified and suitable actions or preparatory activities are on. That's it.
I'd like to say at this point, look, first of all, whatever you may say, 3 days, 4 days, 2 days, please don't forget there are 200 million people there. And if you are going to think that a population of 200 million people, 20 crores, that you can sort of, just walk through them in 3 days or overcome in 3 days. And if they are unfriendly, 1971 was different because it was a friendly population. It was a friendly population. They were welcoming the Indian Army. And today, in fact, the whole purpose since the last, not even 1 year, but more than 1 year, the Jamaat-e-Islami's key focus has been this anti-India propaganda to stoke every kind of hatred against India that they can. Of course, they're getting their own back for 1971 when they were unable to. But if you have a population of 200 million, extremely unfriendly, armed.
That's a great point, ma'am. That's a great point.
Please don't think 3 days, 5 days. I mean, it's an incredible thing that we can think. I think our knowledge of the Eastern sector is and please don't underestimate the impact it has on the Northeast. Are you going to protect your Northeast? Are you going to walk through here? What are you going to
Yeah.
do? So I think this is a very important aspect that we have totally underestimated. And also, let's not forget that if you have an unfriendly population, you may think that they have nothing in terms of arms, but it can be a tremendous nuisance value in terms of the aircraft that they're getting. They've already ordered a lot of more aircraft from China, all that. Please, I think this is a very...
I thank you, Ambassador ma'am. I think point is well taken. I think
Secondly,
there's a lot of substance. Yeah.
secondly, I have myself got direct experience of this. In fact, what I'm seeing now in Bangladesh is for me a lot of deja vu, because when I was in Bangladesh as High Commissioner, Prime Minister Khaleda Zia was the Prime Minister. It was a very unfriendly regime. And I could see how they were operating with the help of Pakistan. It was not only unfriendly to India, it was very soft on Pakistan. In fact, we know that Prime Minister Khaleda Zia spent all the months of the liberation war inside the Pakistani cantonment. There are very close relations between the Pakistan military and the BNP forces. And what they were doing, what was happening in the time that I was there, was not only the activities. There were two important factors that you take on board as security threats. One is what they were doing to help the Northeast insurgent groups, in terms of giving them facilities, coming in, staying there, camps, even as you all would have heard of the famous Chittagong Arms Hall, where weaponry was purely fortuitous that, it was uncovered because there was this dispute between the police, two branches of the police and their intelligence agencies, etc. That's another story altogether. But if we had not known about it, if that volume of arms had come in and then fanned out into India and other parts of the Northeast, history could have been totally different. But it was caught in time, it was unearthed. But that was what the kind of help that was being given to the Northeast insurgent groups, to other groups in India, including the Maoists and so on. So that is one thing which was actually happening for the Northeast. And secondly, Pakistan was using Bangladesh, all the 3 years that I was there, as a springboard for the attacks into India. So today, what we're doing, guarding the western border and looking at the drones, etc., 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 if you have another 4,000-kilometer border to guard, which can be used by Pakistan as a launching pad, and in those 3 years that I was there, every terrorist attack in India had a huge Bangladeshi footprint, because they were using the Bangladesh illegal immigrants in India. They were sending in, not only necessarily coming themselves, they were coming in and using that. So it was a huge situation of concern for India because of these two factors. Don't forget about Pakistan's bleeding by 1,000 cuts that they've been following since 1989. And they get another 4,000-kilometer border area from which to launch those kind of attacks. And
I think you made your point, and thank you so much. And